Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
It is time once again for the Hooked on Movies podcast. Today, we are continuing the Lord of the Rings trilogy with the 2002 release, The Two Towers. As always, please welcome Ted.
My precious.
And Ken.
But the Van Hamlet, he knows. He's always watching.
All right, you guys are freaking me out. And our celebrity guest for the trilogy, Justin.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
And I am Eric. What we need is a few good taters. What we need are a few good reviews. That's right. Ken, give us a synopsis.
Okay, the sequel to the Golden Globe nominated and FII award-winning The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers follows the continuing quest of Frodo and the Fellowship to destroy the One Ring. Frodo and Sam discover they are being followed by a mysterious golem. Aragorn and the elf archer Legolas and Gimli the dwarf encountered the besieged Rohan kingdom, whose once great king Theoden has fallen under Saruman's deadly spell.
All right, well, that was easy enough. Let's talk about the first time we saw this movie. For me, I have no idea when I first saw this movie. It's a blur to me. How about you, Ken?
Theater, when it first came out, I think probably opening weekend.
Wow, look at you. Justin, I'm assuming theater for you?
Opening day,
first
during
in line.
The day, first in line. 9 a.m. showing.
He was running the projector.
Yeah, no,
dressed up as his
definitely.
favorite character. I can see it.
I didn't do any of the cosplay or anything like that, but I was definitely there first day, first showing for this one.
Nice. Ted, how about you?
I saw it in the theater too. I don't exactly remember if it was opening weekend. It probably was. I know I saw this is the only one I saw in the movie theater twice. So I ended up going back with a friend after I saw it the first time.
I am obviously in the minority here with you guys. Ted, give us particulars of this one.
Okay, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, directed by Peter Jackson, is a screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, Stephen Sinclair, and Peter Jackson. It's based off of the novel The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. It has a running time of 170 minutes. It has a release date of December 18th, 2002. It had a budget of $94 million, and it had a box office gross of $947.9 million.
Wow.
Yeah, very lucrative. And Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers stars Elijah Wood again as Frodo Baggins, Ian McKellen reprising his role as Gandalf the White, Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee, Andy Serkis as Gollum or Smeagol, Billy Boyd as Peregrine Took, Dominic Monaghan as Meriadoc Brandybuck, John Rhys-Davies as Gimli. He also voiced Treebeard. Orlando Bloom as Legolas, Bernard Hill as Theoden, Christopher Lee as Sauron the White, Hugo Weaving as Elrond, David Wenham as Faramir, Brad Dourif as Grima Wormtongue, Carl Urban as Faramir, Liv Tyler as Arwen, Kate Blanchett as Galadriel, and Sean Bean as Boromir.
And Jerry Mathers as the Beaver. Because everybody is in this movie.
Exactly.
Ted, what did the critics think of this one as compared to the first one?
This is an amazing thing because the critics score is a certified fresh 95%, and the audience score is a 95%.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And as far as the reviews go, I was only able to find one negative review.
Is it from Eric?
Yeah, it's from Eric.
Yeah.
It's from Sarah Sands. She's from the Daily Telegraph from the United Kingdom. She said the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, is like being trapped in a nerd's bedroom.
Well,
I guess
that's true.
I guess
I don't know if that's
maybe
considered a negative, though, right? I mean,
I'm not sure if she's trying to tell us that she's kidnapped or what.
maybe.
On the positive side, Richard Roper from Ebert and Roper said, "This film doesn't change my review of the original, but it does have me eagerly looking forward to the final installment. I liked it a lot." Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times, he said, "It is not faithful to the spirit of Tolkien and misplaces much of the charm and whimsy of the books, but it stands on its own as a visionary thriller."
Positive. So we're breaking this one into a three-part section here, as we do with all our movies now. So we are going to have Justin tell us about the first part of this movie.
Which works out because I know how to pronounce everything. So
It's good.
Wait,
Yeah.
what are you trying to say?
I'm just trying to tell you there's an
Well, you
R in
couldn't pronounce-
Aragorn.
Yeah, you couldn't pronounce Theoden earlier.
Don't feel bad, Ken. I couldn't. I was reading through it going, better you than me. I'd rip this thing to shreds. Let the expert read this one, right?
Exactly.
Go for it.
So the plot, part one. Awakening from a dream of Gandalf fighting the Balrog of Moria, Frodo Baggins finds himself along with Samwise Gamgee lost in the Emil Mule near Mordor. They discover that they are being tracked by Gollum, a former bearer of the One Ring. Capturing Gollum, Frodo takes pity and allows him to guide them, reminding Sam that they will need Gollum's help to infiltrate Mordor. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli pursue a band of Uruk-hai to save their companions Merry and Pippin, entering the kingdom of Rohan. The Uruk-hai are ambushed by the Rohirrim, allowing Merry and Pippin to escape into Fanghorn Forest. Meeting Aragorn's group, the Rohirrim's leader, Éomer, explains that he and his men have been exiled by Rohan's king Theoden, who is under the control of Saruman, and is in his servant Grima Wormtongue. Éomer believes Merry and Pippin were killed during the raid, but leaves the group two horses. In Fanghorn, Aragorn's group encounters Gandalf, who after his fight against the Balrog was resurrected as Gandalf the White to help Middle-earth.
Pretty exciting. Listen, you read it. Almost more exciting than watching the movie. Nice.
I was waiting for that.
I know.
Oh, Viggo's got his moments, right? You know.
Yeah. So, we kick it off in kind of like that recap of when Gandalf took his little fall off the ledge there and kind of what happened. Great way to start the movie out. Because everyone want to know, is Gandalf dead or alive?
I think he was in the trailer, so, you know.
Yeah.
Was he in the trailer? I wasn't
Could have been
sure.
his evil twin. Could have been
No,
J.R.
that's,
Ewing. Who knows?
Mandalf.
Yeah.
His
Randolph, right.
Randolph.
It's Schmandolf. Schmandolf
Schmandolf.
the Schmay.
Randolph, we're back! And thus our review of Trading Places.
There we go.
I think it's interesting the opening of Gandalf, doing battle. I mean, it makes Gandalf basically a badass. He's attacking this thing all the way down to the core of the earth. It's a great visual.
It's the longest fall ever.
It is a long
It
fall.
just keeps
but
falling and falling and falling and
what do you
falling.
want him to do? Walk there? I mean, come on.
Well, at some point you got to hit the ground or water or something. And at the speed he's going, he just turned into just an ink splot.
Yeah, it's weird. They have kind of established that wizards are made of sterner stuff than humans, but we don't really get anything specific on how tough they are. Like, they can be killed from what we understand, but it's like it's very difficult. So he's the obvious choice to fight the Balrog and all that. So literally no one else would have stand a chance.
I think I compared this to like the first movie where he's kind of like the elderly wizard, and he's getting his ass kicked by Christopher Lee. And now all of a sudden it's kind of like, where did this guy come from? This guy who, we haven't seen that up to this point. I mean, we've seen him in battle, but not this aggressive. So I think it's a nice change of pace into this movie to start the movie off.
Well, my question is this, and maybe Justin can elaborate more because he's read the books, but is this who Gandalf really was all along? And he was just playing down his powers so he could fit in with everybody else?
It's one of those things where he was always very aloof. Like he would put things into motion and not really be the person that was doing them himself. So he would kind of set up the pieces and just stand back. And a lot of the reasons that he did that is because he wanted to avoid responsibility and he didn't want to be kind of tied down. In the Hobbit movies, they allude to how he was like really infatuated with Galadriel and all that. Realistically, he was a scholar, and he liked the comforts of life and things like that. So
Smoking the pipe.
Exactly. Those were the things that he would do, and he would go after knowledge and all that rather than going after power, like Saruman, who went after the Palantir and wanted to be the greatest servant of Sauron. So it's not that he was hiding this; it's that he needed to be reborn and become more serious about it.
I think we see that in the first movie with Saruman, him going to see him because he is much stronger and wiser, and he was kind of like his protege. I mean, because he didn't really take this seriously until he found out more about what the ring really was. I think this is just him rising to the occasion. Now, I haven't watched like the Hobbit movies or read the Hobbit. Now, I did watch the Hobbit cartoon when I was a very little kid, but I don't remember much about it. So I don't know if his character was more aggressive back there or if he was more of aloof.
Oh, in the cartoon, he was absolutely a badass. I mean, he showed up and killed the king of the goblins with his sword, and that was pretty cool. So he has a famous elven sword called Glamdring the Foe Hammer. Later on, like when we're into some of these battles with Gandalf, like just how he is, like he's not afraid to get out there with his sword and start kicking ass.
Yeah, that kind of answers my question. Where I do disagree a little bit with Ken is like he does fight the Balrog, and he's not Gandalf the White at that point. Reserve, and I think he plays down his knowledge of the ring, that he doesn't terrify Frodo. I don't know. It seems like he knows the future sometimes, and that he has like visions of the future. And I think that he knows that if he scares Frodo won't follow through with the journey.
But he doesn't know about the ring because he says that in the first movie, Fellowship of the Ring. He doesn't know that's the ring to rule them all. In fact, he has to test Frodo to throw in the fire and to see if there's any markings on it. He doesn't know about the ring.
Yeah, they do that in the book too, where it's like you're like, does Gandalf know? And they're like, oh, he doesn't know. It's like, wow, it seems like he knows, but he's just kind of like there, so it's kind of crazy. You're like, what is he doing?
He probably knows of the ring, but he doesn't think that's the ring.
Well, nobody suspects at this point that Sauron is back.
Except for Aragorn's kingdom.
They're fighting Mordor and orcs and all that. They don't know that the Dark Lord has been reborn once again and all that. So for like the third time,
Right.
What a bad penny he is.
It's like Jason or Michael Myers or something like that. Just keeps him coming back.
Yeah, if Jason was a giant flaming eye, that'd be interesting.
Frodo's like kind of dreaming this, but it actually is happening. And then Frodo wakes up and him and Sam are on their way and they're just lost. I was reading somewhere, even though you're looking straight ahead and you see, where you need to go, it's like being in a forest. Even if you think you're going straight, you're kind of walking in circles. Not uncommon from them to easily get lost because they complain about that they've been in the same place, over and over again. So, I love our introduction to Smeagol. He's got two different names, right?
It's kind of like there's two personalities. There's Smeagol and Gollum. And we'll see that later when Gollum's in the reflecting pool, like looking and speaking, and Smeagol's going back and they're having a
conversation.
And ultimately, I think that's one of the coolest acting scenes that you'll see in this is
he's schizophrenic
with himself. In
multiple
a sense,
personalities.
Yeah. I would.
Essentially, the ring caused him to go insane and split his personality.
And I think the closer they are to the ring, brings one more dominant than the other because he's been away from the ring for so long. It's closer to his original personality. So
and
that's
there's
why
power to it too. When Frodo holds the ring, not even only when he puts it on, he has that sort of cult of personality about him that just absolutely overwrites the thinking on Gollum. And he calls him by his name, Smeagol, and he's like, it's one of those strange moments where he's like, yes, that was our name way back. he calls him master afterwards because he's the one who holds the ring. So he's going to do anything that he can to be close to the ring.
Was this the movie that Andy Serkis was nominated for? Wasn't an Academy Award?
It's either this or the next one. I thought it was this one because there's some really good scenes in it.
Yeah.
So I think it is.
For somebody who's doing motion capture work, which that's difficult in of its own, to try to be able to capture the emotions that go into acting, Andy Serkis does an amazing job here as Gollum/Smeagol. His performance is one of the highlights of the movie. Smeagol/Gollum's journey is one of the more interesting aspects of this story.
You got to give credit to the CGI here because the CGI is really awesome here because you got the facial expressions. I mean, we've seen other movies with CGI characters like, well, we can go to Harry Potter movies with their CGI characters, but this one, the facial reactions are just spot on. And I think along with the actor's voice, you combine those two together, and let's be honest, an Oscar-worthy performance here.
Yeah, and it holds up really well in 4K and on the 4K TVs too. It really does. It's almost flawless. It really is.
About that scene with the Nazgul who's flying on that like the dragon sort of creature like over the marsh. The other scene is when Frodo goes underneath and he sees the ghost. That was crazy, like those effects. Yeah. I'm like, this is frightening. Like I can imagine watching this like with a kid and being like, wow, there's some actual fright and jump scares in this.
Yeah, and the dragons that they ride, those had to be the prototypes that they used for Game of Thrones later on in the decade. I mean, because for a TV show, those were pretty flawless as well. I'm surprised it only cost $94 million to make the movie. Because the CGI it's something that could be made today.
You look at this and you compare it to like Attack of the Clones, and you look and see how bad that has aged over the years. And
that is some of the worst CGI in that movie.
It's pretty brutal.
It's really bad.
It is.
Watch Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil movie. It's literally like looking at someone. Was it Fred Astaire dancing with Jerry from Tom and Jerry? It's like literally looking at that. I'm like,
Hey, that's pretty good. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm just saying you can tell one's animation. You can tell one's a real person. And yes, for the record, that's what Anchors Away. That was way better than Resident Evil. Yeah.
Back to Andy Serkis really quick. When he was doing his lines for this movie, he was actually going back and forth. It wasn't like he read one line and then recorded the other lines separately. He actually did this back and forth, like having multiple personalities. I think that takes a lot of talent in order to perform that. I mean, even though you're a voice actor and you could just, try it over and over again, to switch back and forth from one personality to another personality and do that straight through, that's amazing.
He said he came up with the voice by hearing his cat cough up a fur ball.
He might be one of the more underappreciated actors.
He's getting his due. I mean, he just directed Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. I don't think he's doing the third one, but I mean, he's had a fair amount of stuff.
I don't know if that should be mentioned, Venom 2.
Well, look at it this way. So after this movie, he was Kong in Peter Jackson's King Kong. Mm-hmm. He did 13 going on 30 with the lovely Judy Greer, and I suppose Jennifer Garner too. Past that, like what was he really doing until he hits things like I think The Prestige. He played Nikolai Tesla's second in command guy. He really wasn't doing stuff, and then it's like, all right, he's doing all this mocap stuff. Then he finally gets like these really big opportunities. And for him being a director, that comes directly from him playing Ulysses Klaue in Black Panther.
He was really good in that as well.
Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, of course. Yeah. How can I forget the Caesar? Literally plays the main character in all of those movies, doing motion capture. Yeah.
And he's Snoke in The Force Awakens.
Which is better CGI than Attack of the Clones, but I don't know how you feel about Snoke.
They sold him out at the end, but that's for another podcast.
And of course, he's got the Marvel movies going too. So
yeah,
and then he plays Alfred in the Batman.
The most recent, the Batman. Yeah. I think he's the one right now who is from this benefited the most. You could look at all of them. You don't really see Liv Tyler anymore. Viggo Mortensen's semi-retired. No Hugo Weaving, and maybe Carl Urban is the only other one who's enjoying a nice renaissance right now.
I didn't even know that was Carl Urban
Yeah,
until
young Carl
I was
Urban.
watching it this time around.
And I mean, you've seen a lot of these other people in various things. Miranda Otto, who plays Eowyn, she was in that Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Never seen it.
Yeah, it's a Netflix thing. So, yeah. Graham Worm took me to talk about Brad Dourif. So, the voice of Chucky himself.
Yeah, in Mississippi Burning and
Dune.
Rob Zombie's Halloween.
He was the doctor in Frank Herbert's Dune from 1986, the David Lynch one.
Something about that particular character here, Wormtongue, did they intentionally try to make him look like Glenn Danzig?
No, but that's an interesting thing because he definitely looks like him.
He looks exactly like Glenn Danzig.
Yeah,
it's
a lot.
Like freaky. It's like I can't separate the two. It's like I'm like looking at Glenn Danzig.
He has this interesting thing to him too. Like when you see him, there's definitely this appeal where it's like he's both attractive and repulsive at the same time. Because you see him and he's got like these stark features with like the piercing eyes and all that. There's a scene that he has in the next section with Eowyn where she's looking at him and I feel like she's actually buying what he's saying. And I'm like, they did a really good job with this character because it could have been a small throwaway role, but they got Brad Dourif, and after this he goes on to do Deadwood. And I love Deadwood. I don't know about you guys, but
yeah, Deadwood's awesome.
Show. I like it when my wood is alive, to be honest with you. So.
He likes live wood. Okay. He likes Fanghorn.
I don't like it when my wood is dead. So
good old Treebeard.
Oh, it's a family show. Come on.
It's a family.
Hey,
it's a family show, and
it was
I'll
just an
probably end up
innuendo.
editing it out anyway. So
it was an innuendo. He was talking about trees, wasn't he?
Trees, yeah.
Talking
trees,
trees. What a great segue.
Yeah.
Do you guys want me to move on to the next section or
No,
anything else?
Because we still need to talk about all the way up to Gandalf becomes Gandalf the White.
He just kind of shows up, though.
He does kind of show up, but I think it's interesting how they try to misplay it with Christopher Lee's voice along with it to kind of mislead us, thinking that it's the bad white wizard, not the good white wizard. They're both white wizards.
It's almost like an evolutionary thing, right? So it's like they start off because there's brown, there's blue.
So
it's like
karate. You get like a yellow belt and you get a brown belt.
Your brown wizard would be Radagast, who is kind of a nature wizard and all that. The blue ones, I think they were like more espionage or something. They're really in the Tales of Numenor and the Silmarillion, so not at all relevant for this, but your white wizard is the most powerful of the bunch. They have the most power, and usually the head of the order is one. There's only 5 wizards in this entire world. They're not easy to come by.
Interesting.
The first movie left off with Merry and Pippin being kidnapped. I like these two characters in this movie more than the other 2 movies, and we'll talk about Return of the King on our next episode. I kind of like the serious tone that they're in, because in the first movie they're pranksters, right? And even to a certain extent, thieves. They're just mischievous, and they're like little babies who can't keep their hands off of things, right? They always have to touch something when they shouldn't touch it. But then this movie,
they're basically 3-year-olds, kind of saying.
Well, basically, in a way. But in this movie, they're really not, because at first they're captured, so they're really worried about getting away. They just have a more serious tone, and we could talk about that later when they walk with the trees, how evolved their characters become in this movie. I do like these 2 characters a little bit more here than let's say in the first movie. Because the first movie, I just think they're just annoying to me, whereas here they serve a purpose.
They're growing up a little.
They have a major part of the story here. They are who Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are searching for. They also advance the attack on Sauron, because they kind of played the tree to take them by where Sauron lives in the tower. They have a purpose here, whereas in the first movie, they don't really have a purpose except for being kidnapped at the end.
Maybe comic relief here and there.
When you have something coming in a book, And it's like, oh, this will be there. So it's like they clearly
Right.
have to be here, walking through the snow and hiding from the birds and going into Moria, and so their part hasn't come. It takes a
Right.
while for Gimli and Legolas to really do anything in the story, and then they become like, oh, I love the dynamic with these guys. It's just you gotta get there.
I'm surprised they even get there because Gimli can't even keep up with them. He's out of breath and he's out of shape. I don't know how they get anywhere with him.
Well,
he's
he's a
short.
natural sprinter.
I will say one of my favorite parts is Rohan's king. He's under the spell.
He's gross, when you see
He's
him in
gross.
those effects, you're like, ugh.
But I love the transformation, though, of his face when when they bring him out of it. That slow into becoming a human man again. For even now, it's a nice seamless process. It's really, really well done. I don't know how he did it 20-something years ago, because a lot of movies back then were not getting that right.
Did you guys notice that he was the captain from Titanic?
Yes.
I didn't think of that, but now that you mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what I knew him from, and I think I've seen him in something else where he played someone's father. But I was like, oh, that's Theoden.
He plays a pretty good king.
Oh yeah,
pretty solid king that's kind of unsure about certain things, but know that his men look up to him for courage and things of that nature. So you have Aragorn and the king, and you have the guy who would be king, right?
Yeah.
And you have the guy who is king, and they have different ideas of what how to lead, but they're both right and both wrong.
He has a connection to the people that Aragorn as a ranger wouldn't have. So this is an important piece in the character journey for Aragorn, because he's going to see what it takes to be a truly heroic king.
That's what I like about that. It's almost kind of like he's learning, but they're both learning from each other.
Of course. And he knows everybody knows who Aragorn is at this point. Like he knows who he is.
I think I was reading somewhere that I guess in the extended version maybe that he's 87 years old.
Yeah, he's way older than we think.
He's from a lineage that has extended life.
Well,
And
that's
he's
really good for his
supposedly-
age.
Is supposedly the last of his kind.
Well, and then he has a kid with an elf, and elves live thousands of years. So
Yeah.
So he's a ranger originally that we learned in the first movie, but you have a lot of other rangers in this movie. What's the difference between him being a ranger and the other rangers that we see in this movie here?
Who are you saying are the other rangers?
You get a little bit further down. So rangers are basically, they go throughout the wilderness and they'll hunt and they'll do things like that. When we get to kind of Faramir, who's Boromir's brother, he becomes a ranger, and it's like a patrol. They do things and like they'll hide in trees and use arrows and stuff, and like do things secretly instead of attacking straight on like a knight would. It's more about like the style. They're more at one with the environment and nature than the dwarves that would just like run at you with hammers and axes.
So one wants to be that, and the other one was kind of exiled into that. Is that a good way of putting it?
He is not keen on his lineage, and he's really worried that he's going to repeat the mistake that his ancestor Isildur did. That's really kind of the thing about him. There's a scene in the first movie where like he looks at the ring and all that, and it's like he doesn't want any part of it. And that ring will corrupt you. It'll corrupt anybody. So it's those small tests that he passed, but Boromir did not pass. That's kind of going back to the story there. Since he passed that, he's going to try to do whatever he can to support Frodo. That's what gets us to this point, because the only way he can really support anybody at this point is by saving Merry and Pippin.
Which he believes they get killed. Like what I think about Aragorn, how the hobbits escaped.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and that's what a ranger would do, is they would be able to see tracks and like signs of animals and things like that, and that's just what he does. He's a tracker by trade. He's someone that spends long amount of time alone in the wilderness, so he would be able to find those things. And that's all part of what he's done. That's his life as Strider, where he's called, instead of being Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Minas Tirith. That's a lot, Eric, isn't it?
And my head's about to explode.
I know. I was just thinking that.
When he thinks they're getting killed, he kicks something. He actually hurts his foot, and actually that scream.
I was thinking that he broke his foot there.
Yeah, that scream was him being in pain, not from being upset with the fact that they were dead. I don't know if it was like what he exactly kicked. Was it a rock
It was a
or
helmet.
a helmet?
Yeah.
But I guess it seriously injured him. There was a lot of injuries in this movie. Bruises and breaks and separations and things of that nature.
In the extended edition, you could see Sean Astin runs into a pond and comes out with like a cut foot because he stepped on like a broken piece of glass in the pond.
Oh, wow.
So there's that. And I was telling you before about Gimli, John Rhys Davies. He cut off the tip of his finger trying to get an engine started on a truck that was... so they go do it, and he lost like the tip of his middle finger.
Davies is a weird character. I mean, I think about him, and I think about the fact that the main characters in this movie all got tattoos, but he didn't. He went ahead and sent his stunt double to get the tattoo instead.
Now that's Spaceballs.
That's messed up. That's
You
messed
idiot!
Up.
You didn't tattoo them. You tattooed their stunt doubles.
So go ahead, Justin. Why don't you go ahead and read part 2 of The Two Towers?
Gandalf leads the trio to Rohan's capital, Edoras, where Gandalf frees Theoden from Saruman's control. Aragorn stops Theoden from executing Wormtongue, who flees. Learning of Saruman's plan to destroy Rohan with his Uruk-hai army, Theoden evacuates his citizens to the fortress of Hornburg at Helm's Deep. Gandalf departs to find Éomer and his followers, hoping they will fight for their restored king. Aragorn befriends Theoden's niece Éowyn, who becomes infatuated with him. When the refugees traveling to Helm's Deep are attacked by Saruman's warg-riding orcs, Aragorn falls from a cliff and is presumed dead. He is found by Theodred's horse Brago and rides him to Helm's Deep, witnessing Saruman's army marching towards the fortress. I feel like the horse part is like such a moot point. Okay, but it's like, all right, if that's important. In Rivendell, Arwen is told by her father Elrond that Aragorn will not return. He reminds her that if she remains in Middle-earth, she will outlive Aragorn by thousands of years, and she reluctantly departs for Valinor. Elrond is contacted by Galadriel of Lothlorien, who convinces him that the elves should honor their allegiance with men, and that they should dispatch accompanied elves to Helm's Deep. In Fangorn Forest, Merry and Pippin meet Treebeard and Ent, who's a walking tree herder, basically, convincing Treebeard that they are allies, and they are brought to the Ent Council, where the Ents decide not to take part in the coming war. Pippin asks Treebeard to take them in the direction of Isengard, where they witness the deforestation caused by Saruman's war effort. Enraged, Treebeard and the Ents storm Isengard, trapping Saruman in his tower.
This is why I had you read the plot, because there's a lot of hard names, things here to say.
There's some intense parts in this second part here. You're getting to kind of like the near climax and everything, but just starting out, going back to the part that you were talking about with the special effects with Gandalf and Theoden, where they kind of take him back. Theoden's in this haze because he doesn't really know what's going on. We find out that it's a spell. You're introduced to my favorite character in this, which would be Éowyn, Miranda Otto. She's amazing. I love what she did and just how she played this character. And I've seen her in a lot of other things, but this is just like one of my favorite roles for her.
She's an interesting character. It's actually too bad, in a movie that with the extended version is almost 4 hours long, that they couldn't find more time for her. Is she more prominent in the book, Justin?
Oh, definitely, yeah. She has her moment in the next one a lot more than in this, but there's build-up stuff and there's character work, and I mean, her brother is Éomer, so they're prominent characters. She's essentially the princess of this nation, and you're willing to believe it's like, oh, there's a human for Aragorn, and they kind of lead you in that direction, but it just ain't happening. And the movie's trying to flim-flam you here because they're like, oh, Arwen is going to go away because she's going to outlive him by thousands of years, and even though she's in love with him, and it's like, okay, they're trying to pull one over on you, and by introducing the only other woman in the movie, pretty much,
I liked her interaction with Wormtongue.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's trying to manipulate her as well to kind of almost put her under a spell in a sense. Because what he's interested in is her. That's what he's in it for. He's not in it for the destruction of man. He's in it to get the girl.
Mm-hmm.
So I like their interaction. The reason why I like Wormtongue is also because when we do see him later, when he does get kicked out and he sees this army, he doesn't realize what he got himself into.
Yeah.
He has that look like, oh, this is what it was about. We're going to get rid of men. That's not what he thinks he signed up for. Even though it's a very small part, I think it's done very well. I really enjoy his character a lot.
How gross do you feel watching that scene with him and her? You know,
It's creepy.
Yeah.
It's so gross, and I'm like, oh, and I mean, Brad Dourif is just so good at like doing that.
Mhm.
And if you've seen him in other stuff, it's like he really plays that part so uncomfortably, and you're just like, oh, he went there, ew. You know?
No, he's a very good actor in that
He's got
way.
this unctuous look to him, and ugh,
So
like oily.
So Aragorn and her don't fall in love? Because it seems
that's-
like at the end of the movie that they're...
No.
Just remember, there's one more movie, so
Yeah.
you know.
And it's been a long time since
And
I've
his
seen that particular movie.
his girlfriend is the third billed actress on this entire credit reel. So it's like, oh, Liv Tyler, yeah. So
Yeah, his heart
you
belongs
really
to
think
her.
she's just gonna do that and go away?
I feel bad for her that he doesn't have the same interest in her as she does for him. You know, because you could see that she's smitten, and then when she thinks that he's been killed, her heart drops. So you kind of wish that she would find love. In the next movie, it almost feels like she's going to get on with one of the hobbits. But yeah, so I like here's your consolation prize. You get a hobbit.
It's interesting too because she goes from being one of those tropes where it's like, oh, she's here to be a romantic trophy for somebody, to being like one of the most badass characters in this series. And she kind of has glimmers of that here when you see her like practicing with the sword and all that.
She doesn't want to lead the people away. She wants to fight with the men. So
Of course. And that's why when you look at this, you look at like this culture, you can see that a lot of the work and the detail they put into it, it's like, all right, Tolkien wrote these characters just like we talk about with Star Trek sometimes, Ken. He wrote these characters as if they were different nationalities in Europe. So these would be your Vikings, you know? So
no, they're definitely Vikings. You can tell by
the mead hall,
Rohan's,
you know, everything.
Modern day parlance, if you've played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you know all about the Norse and how they set up their villages and everything like that. So that's like almost one for one that they're Vikings.
I like that. You get some more cool effects with Treebeard and with the wargs and all that. I do think that it falls a little flat when you see Merry and Pippin walking, right? And Treebeard is like holding them. I think that's kind of a weak part.
The CGI doesn't hold up as much. It looks a little off now when you watch it.
They really put it on Gollum and all that, and you're like, oh, this looks really good. And then it's like this one, it's like, okay, like
you
maybe it's kind of
$10 million budget. We'll spend $9,900,000 on Gollum, and then the rest goes to the tree.
Yeah, it's like they spent all their character building points on Gollum, so they just had to, come back and, they're like, we'll just give him 5. That'll be good enough.
The tree bear wasn't he voiced by
Jonathan Rhys Davies?
That's right, Pauly Shore. Pauly Shore was the no. I'm just kidding.
I think it's cool that there's a lot of people doing double things in this movie. So it's not the first time that we'll probably hear about those type of things. You were talking about the romance with Arwen, and of course you have her father Elrond. I don't know. This is one of the parts of the movie where I don't give a shit. About this kind of father who doesn't approve of the man that she loves. Basically wants him to go away. I mean, so what if she takes a number of years to hang out with a mortal man? I mean, if she can live forever or live for a very long time, isn't this a very short span of time for her? And then when he's gone, couldn't she then go back and rejoin the elves?
It's a class thing. If you think about like the royal and ruling class and all that, there's an elitism to it where he feels that he is below him. So, or below her, I should say. So he's the king of the elves there, and he's got his daughter who's the princess, and she's absolutely in love with this man who the only thing that Elrond sees when he looks at him is the weakness in man because of his great great grandsire, who at his moment of weakness, instead of throwing away the ring and saving the world, decided to keep it for himself. So Aragorn will never be good enough for Arwen in Elrond's eyes.
until the end. Does the romance part of this movie, does that take away from everything else? Or does it just make it just a longer movie?
Well, I mean, it definitely exists in the book, but I mean, I guess that's more of a question for you guys. Like, what do you think about it in terms of this? Because I look at this from like, how does it relate to the book? Like, is it fun to watch? Because there's many different ways that I can dissect this as like the super fan that I am. But what do you think from like an objective point of view, guys?
I think she's necessary for the advancement of Aragorn's character. She has to be there because she saves him on more than one occasion. I don't think it's just unnecessary to make things longer. I think that it helps advance the character arc of essentially the main character.
Are we talking about Liv Tyler's character?
Yes.
Eye candy. Move on. She's Liv Tyler. That's all we got to say. One of only two females in the whole movie. Move on.
I mean, pretty much. It is kind of
It's
like
a
Star
sausage
Wars in that aspect.
So,
Yeah, they have Galadriel too, but she's not really in this one. You know, there's really only two ladies.
I just don't feel like I had that same connection to her as I did in the first film. I just felt like her character was a stronger character in the first film, and then we kind of fall in this love. I almost going to say love triangle because you got two girls that are basically in love with him.
That's accurate.
But Daddy, I love him, kind of deal, and it just slightly takes away from the movie a little bit.
So that is a perennial theme that is seen across literature, and I mean, like think about Romeo and Juliet. You know, like you can go back to probably cave paintings, and there's probably that same story that's going on. Father disapproves of daughter's boyfriend. Drama ensues. But here's the thing: she has to give up her immortality if she wants to stay. And that was the whole thing that she said when she gave him the necklace, that she would do that. There's apparently a way for her to do that, like to just become mortal.
I'm curious on how that would work, how that works with losing her immortality. I know they have to leave. I know the elves are leaving, but they have been on Earth for a very, very long time. So why would all of a sudden would she lose her mortality?
I believe she has to give it up freely. Something along those lines. So it's like a personal choice or something along those lines. And I think it's also tied to the Even Star, which is the necklace that she had given him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I had thought too.
Doesn't answer my question, though, why she loses it.
Well, she hasn't lost anything yet. We're just seeing her getting pulled, and it's like, okay, is she going to be true to her heart? Is she going to be true to the one that she loves? Or is she going to listen to her father and take off at the Grey Havens? So that's what we want to see. Because right now what the movie is trying to do is push you towards, but no, Aragorn should be with Éowyn, right? The movie's pushing you towards that. And it's like, oh, well, he should just be with her anyway because Arwen is just going away anyway. This would just solve that problem completely. Well, it's like, yeah, but the heart wants what the heart wants. And that's really where we're stuck between this love triangle, as you're putting it there.
So they get ambushed. Aragorn, he gets thrown off the cliff, right? Now, the horse, when we read the plot, and that plot was read from Wikipedia, it said it was the king's horse. But
so it's the king's son who died.
Yeah, his son had just died, and he was kind of in that fog, so he didn't even realize it. And then there's this wonderful scene about he's talking about how this, I'll call them edelweiss, the white flowers, and they grow on the graves of kings and such. And he's like, oh, look, my son, this grows just as on the graves of my forebears, but his horse is still around. So it's another part where we see something that recognizes, the prince's horse, recognizes the regal stature of Aragorn. He's really coming along. So it's just kind of another plot device to say, hey, guess what? Return of the King, this is the guy,
He also sets the horse free. When they're leaving for Helm's Deep, the stable person is being mean to the horse, and because the horse doesn't want to leave, and Aragorn saves the horse and sets him free. So that's how that all connects there.
Fun fact about that horse, Viggo actually bought the horse. He liked it so much that he went to the owners and actually purchased the horse from them based on how the horse reacted to him during the movie.
And then you got to take that home from, New Zealand and all that. So
Yeah.
What the shipping cost for that is.
plus there's you got to wait like 6 months for like an embargo or something like that through quarantine to bring it into the country.
I wonder if the owners were there in New Zealand, or if this is a horse that was already shipped in.
Put it in one of those fake 2-person horse costumes, and they're like, no, that's just 2 guys. Yeah.
He gets home and he knows he's got 2 guys running around his house. Yeah.
That's how it works in the movies.
I know to set up the drama of the end of the movie that they have to go to Helm's Deep. But Gandalf is trying to convince Theoden not to go to Helm's Deep.
And he's wrong.
I understand because, ultimately Theoden's man, and he's making a human decision, essentially, because he's concerned about his people. Helm's Deep has protected them before. It's interesting that he doesn't take Gandalf's advice, and when everybody else in the movies kind of listens to Gandalf and takes what he says to heart, he kind of goes rogue and puts everybody at risk. I just think that's an interesting decision. Like I said, it sets up one of the coolest battle sequences
definitely
ever put on film.
Yeah, because the king doesn't even ask for help. They say, why don't you set out riders to get help? And he's like, nah, they won't help us anyway. He's very stubborn. He believes that his fortress is impenetrated. I can't even say the word. So
Impenetrable.
Which might have been one of the reasons why he was able to be so manipulated to begin with and not put under a spell.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good point. But did you hear the first thing that he says to Gandalf after Grima talks to him? He goes, oh, look, it's Gandalf Stormcrow. It's the guy who always shows up with bad news. As we see, Gandalf is wrong a lot. And it's one of those things where just as many times as he's right, he could be wrong about something. And the fact that Theoden had to choose what to do as a king, nobody else here has that perspective. That's like what we were talking about with Ted earlier. It's like Aragorn's learning that perspective. I don't just do this because I want to fight. I know you want to go and fight, but I've got women and children to think about. I've got the line of people, that dates way back to thousands of years to protect. And I know, tried and true, we can do it here because we don't have the numbers. Because, we pissed off my nephew and, he's got 3,000 riders out somewhere 300 miles away by now. He's weighing his options, and it's the most pragmatic solution that he can have is to wait everybody out until they can hopefully survive.
He's just a very prideful man. He could have probably got, his son and those people to come.
They said there's 300 leagues away. How are they going to get him? They didn't have a way to reach them. And that's why Gandalf takes off, and it's like, oh, look for me on the sunlight of the 5th day. Which is weird, and it goes back to what you guys were saying about how he can kind of tell the future. Mm-hmm. Yes, but it's like, is that real? We don't know. But that's the whole thing too, Ken. It's like, what would you do if you had to protect all these people, and you know that if you stay where you are right now, you're done because they can attack you with their numbers and they're going to overwhelm you. So what do you do to try to mitigate that? If you go here, you've got a chance. But if you stay and you fight, you got nothing. You can't reach the cavalry that you had, which would have been the only strong defense.
No, and I agree with his decision. However, I don't agree with him not listening to others to get other voices, other opinions to think the solution out. He has only one choice in his head, and that's the choice that he's going to go with. I don't mind his choice. I just don't like his stubbornness where he faces everybody else out.
Yeah, and he definitely shuts down Aragorn pretty hard. And guys, this is the part of the show where I argue with Ken. So
everybody argues with me.
Hey, that's usually my job. What are you talking about?
Like, why are you asking for more backstory on Helm's Deep? Come on.
The great thing about this movie is it doesn't need the backstory because, the backstory kind of follows...
so much.
Because the backstory follows the whole movie. I mean, we get the backstory kind of alongside the actual story the whole way through. And we're kind of reminded of the past, which is kind of a nice way of having the backstory. It kind of goes with the regular story instead of having to set everything up. It's just nicely done. I like how the backstory is infused with the regular story of the movie.
Yeah, it's a really well adapted screenplay. They did such a good job of pulling from so much source material in these books. Like the last 100 pages of the books are just appendices of things, and you're like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's a guy that turns into a bear. Oh, okay, well that's interesting. What's that? Oh, that's the Lord of the Eagles. Oh, okay, well that's interesting. And you can go through that if you are so desiring.
You have the leader well, he's not the leader of the elves. Maybe he's the general of the elves that show up.
There's 3 kings of elves. One of them is Elrond, and the other one is Celeborn and Galadriel. You've got your 3 elven kings there. Those came from Elrond.
Okay.
I think that's Halmir.
Why does he and Aragorn embrace the way they do? Is there something in the extended cut or in the book that says that they have a deeper relationship here?
Aragorn grew up in Rivendell, so he knows them. He speaks Elvish and all that, so that's the whole thing in there. As far as I thought, that was the same guy from Lothlorien who said that dwarf breathes so heavy I could shoot him in the dark.
Right.
So they just came from where he was, so they're happy that he made it alive.
He shows up with an army, and they're outnumbered 10,000 to 300. I'd be happy as shit to see him too. I'd be throwing him a goddamn parade.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Jiminy Christmas. I'd hug him too. Essentially, we're all going to die anyway. We stand a half a chance now.
Mm-hmm.
The hug was kind of almost relational. I felt like they had a friendship, and I wasn't aware of this friendship. That's what I got when I saw the hug. I didn't think about, oh, you came with 300 men? Thank you. It wasn't that kind of hug. It was like appreciative.
Yeah, he comes with more than 300.
Yeah, and he grew up with elves, so he's definitely an elf.
I mean, they know each other.
How many elves did he come with?
I don't know. It's more than 1,000.
Yeah.
Thousands?
At least.
Well, they should have done better then.
Well,
you write down this criticism. Should have brought more elves. Okay.
Yeah.
More elves. Well, the Ensign Isengard, and what a jarring scene it is to see that. And that's, one of the aforementioned in the title, 2 towers is the Tower of Orthantak of Isengard there. And I mean, when you see what it looked like when Gandalf was there in the first to what it looks like now, it's devastation. Ruin. And it just literally, it jarred these things to where they had no choice but, to act. And it's so funny. It's like you wouldn't have thought that, but it's like, oh, they had no restraint after that.
Isengard has been corrupted completely, has been overtaken by Sauron. Even Gandalf told Saruman he doesn't have partners. He's going to overtake you, and he's going to make you subservient, which essentially is what Sauron does.
I'm happy they kept the battle there short with Treebeard and the other trees, because the
trees
CGI,
are badass.
They're badass, but the CGI doesn't really hold up very strongly.
That's the part of this movie that I do agree with. It's the CGI on those that if they were to find a way to remaster this and like clean that up, I would love that. Just so it doesn't look so fakey. It's the only piece that takes me out of it. And I do wonder about how that holds up in 4K. In mine in 1080, it was like, oh, yeah, this looks a little rough. I mean, it doesn't take me out of the movie, but if I had like a technical criticism for it, I'd say that's the part that looks very fakey.
I know. I have the 4K version, and it doesn't look terrible.
It doesn't look bad? Okay.
Yeah, it got cleaned up. I mean, it's not the best in the movie by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't take me out of it. I mean, it's a stretch that the trees are, they're indestructible, essentially. Hey.
Tell that to the other trees.
It's a fantasy story. So, you have to provide a little bit of grace to some things that don't really always make sense.
Would you have liked this better if they played the Rush song, there is unrest in the forest?
No, that wouldn't work very well.
No.
So it makes you question,
Absolutely
though, why the trees didn't fight back to begin with when they were being taken down. If these are like friends of Treebeard, why couldn't they right there, like, hey, we're going to chop these trees down and yank them from the roots? Why didn't they come alive then and try to stop them?
And now you have your analogy to, the European climate of World War II. You hit the nail right on the head.
Exactly.
If everybody saw something going on, how come no one did anything? And then they get there and they're like, it's too late,
Yeah. It's okay, Ken. A broke clock is right twice a day.
He stumbled across
I'm
it.
the one that brought it up.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you bring it up. I mean, that's why they had that little meeting between the trees to discuss what they're going to do, and they decided to do nothing. And like Justin just said,
Well, that's just kind of like what happened with Neville Chamberlain when they met and decided to appease Hitler. Tolkien's taking from real life.
And now you can see
really
who plays the Germans in this theater.
Yeah, which is kind of that bullshit. Whatever.
Fun fact of this in this movie, Christopher Lee actually met Tolkien. So he was the only one in the movie that knew him. Christopher
Lee is the most amazing human being who has ever lived. He is the Dos Equis most interesting man who's ever lived.
Do you have his metal album?
Yes. I've listened to it, yes. It's awesome. Words cannot even begin to describe how awesome he is.
I only knew him as his role as Willy Wonka's father in the... I'm just kidding.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
It's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should go to the third part before Eric falls asleep on us.
The number of thou shalt pulleth is 3. 2 thou shalt only... Oh, wait, sorry. Wrong fantasy. Okay.
Right.
Part 3.
No, man, read it in an accent. You should.
The number thou shalt pulleth is 3. 5 is outright wrong. Yes. Did you guys do that one yet?
Monty Python?
Not yet.
Yeah. Back to business here. Aragorn arrives at Helm's Deep, warning Theoden of Saruman's army approaching. Theoden prepares battle despite being vastly outnumbered. A company of Lothlorien elves arrive to aid the people of Rohan, shortly before Saruman's army attacks the fortress. The Uruk-hai breach the outer wall with explosives, and during the ensuing charge, kill the elves' commander Haldir. The defenders retreat to the keep, where Aragorn convinces Theoden to meet the Uruk-hai in one last charge. At dawn, as the defenders are overwhelmed, Gandalf and Éomer arrive with the Rohirrim, turning the tide of the battle. And the surviving Uruk-hai flee into Fangorn Forest and are killed by the trees. Gandalf warns that Sauron will retaliate. Gollum leads Frodo and Sam through the Dead Marshes to the Black Gate, but recommends they enter Mordor by another route. Frodo and Sam are captured by the Rangers of Ithilien, led by Faramir, younger brother of Boromir. Frodo helps Faramir catch Gollum to save him from being killed by the Rangers. Learning of the One Ring, Faramir takes his captives to Gondor to bring the ring to his father, Denethor. Passing through the besieged city of Osgiliath, Frodo tries to explain to Faramir the true nature of the ring, and Sam explains that Boromir was driven mad by its power. Nazgul nearly captures Frodo, who falls under the ring's power, but Sam saves him and reminds his disheartened Frodo that they are fighting and there is still good left in Middle-earth. Impressed by Frodo's resolve, Faramir releases them. Feeling betrayed, Gollum decides that he will reclaim the ring by leading Frodo to her upon arriving in Cirith Ungol. So, and that's the end of the movie.
I think it's interesting. We haven't really talked much about Frodo and Sam throughout this whole movie. We talked about Gollum for a while, and then we talked about the other characters, but Sam and Frodo, we've kind of strayed away from them, even though they're the other half of this movie.
This isn't their movie. They have their moments. They're really just setting other people up in this, and they're supporting characters. Gollum and Gandalf and Aragorn are your real stars here, because it's more about their journey at this point.
I love the fact they're in the dead marshes, the dead in the marshes, and you're just waiting for their eyes to open up. Really creepy and cool at the same time. It's one of those things that every time I watch it, I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Is that where the original battle took place at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring?
Very possibly it could be, because that's where you've got like the elves and men and orcs and all that are in there. So very possibly.
Their journey is not the main focus of this movie. It's everything in this movie sets up to the climax, which is the battle. But as far as Frodo and Sam go, I like the fact that they meet Faramir, that they give him his due here. He's the least of the two sons.
Yep.
But he's the one that shows that he has the resolve to be able to hold off and not ignore the ring, but let go of the ring and allow Frodo to go on. And he sees the importance of what Frodo's doing. Because there for a while you don't really know exactly if he understands. And when he finally does, it's an amazing thing because he's one of the only men. I guess you could Aragorn is considered a man, but he understands the gravity of the situation, and he knows what will happen if he gives the ring over to his father. It's going to corrupt him just like it corrupted Boromir. Yeah, no, that whole sequence of them is really, really good, and it adds a lot to the movie. And of course, there's some really cool aspects to the battle that they're fighting as well. You have the undead king. Now they fly.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree with you. I'm not a big fan of this character. Okay, first of all, I don't know why he wants to kill Gollum. He says because he entered a restricted area, but then he gives Frodo a chance to save him. So I don't understand that. And he looks like he really is going to get that ring and wants to take it back to his father. Now, I know there's a difference between the extended version and the theatrical version. If I were to go with the extended version, maybe I like his character a little bit more. But with the original version, he's kind of a prick up until when Frodo's about ready to kill Sam, and Sam basically shares his heart with Frodo and saves Frodo from doing this. That he sees that and then changes his mind, because up to then, I think he's going to take that ring and take it all the way to his father.
Well, I just wanted to point out that the similarity between this and another literary work and show that we got to see. Think about Game of Thrones and think about House Stark, where you've got Robb Stark and Jon Snow. Faramir is very much Jon Snow in this.
Right.
Obviously, Aragorn, you could say that too. But it's like the whole thing, the lesser of the sons, the one who's going to pay attention, the one who learns. And you actually see character growth here because he's sitting back and paying attention and learning where his brother did not. So that's the whole thing. And honestly, I love Faramir's character. He's one of my favorites in the book. He's just such an interesting character too, because as good as he is, he's never going to live up to what Boromir, Sean Bean's character was. It's just not going to happen in his father's eyes. He's the lesser of two sons, as Ted was saying. It's one of those things, and you get to see him. It's like, oh, he can do the one thing that his brother couldn't do. He let the ring go. And why they want to kill Gollum? Gollum's an evil creature that's been around for like 400 to 700 years, depending on how long.
He's just
so it's
fishing,
like
sitting there and smacking that fish. It's actually fun watching him do that.
Yeah,
smacks it against the rock a number of times.
Takes a bite of it with his terracotta teeth.
I mean, you feel bad for him. I mean, One thing this movie does a really good job of Gollum is having sympathy for him. I think they do a great job of mixing the two personalities and, knowing that you can't trust him, but at the same time, having that sympathy for him. As a moviegoer, you're in Frodo's shoes. That's a really well done job by Jackson to make that happen.
Yeah, and you get a lot of influence in Frodo from Bilbo and like the innocence that he has. Granted, you wouldn't know that if you didn't read the book, or you wouldn't know that if you didn't see The Hobbit and all that. But it's like you can see those sort of things because Gandalf talks about in Fellowship of the Ring, it was the pity that he had for Gollum that the ring didn't overtake him. And all of those sort of things, and the innocence that these characters have. And you really do see that from Elijah Wood, even though he's not front and center with his performance. But he's doing a good job of kind of making you think this ring is getting deeper and deeper hooks into him every moment. He's calling the Nazgul, and he's going crazy, and he's also like showing remorse and pity towards Gollum and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna help you out here," because he understands what the ring did to him. And he's got nothing but pity for him because he's like, man, I hope that's not me.
And I think that's where, Sam has that struggle with understanding on why Frodo keeps Gollum around, right?
He's jealous
Sam,
too. I mean,
to a certain extent,
jealous. Yeah.
They're both kind of jealous. I mean, Gollum actually has bonded with Frodo. He trusts his master. And if he doesn't sell him out to the Rangers here, who knows what might happen? I mean, eventually I think he still turns against them, but it might take longer, or maybe it never does happen.
We kind of end the movie with it happening, so.
Frodo lied. He tricked him, saying everything was going to be okay, and then he got captured.
I don't know what during World War II, besides morphine, would have been the addictive drug of the time, but Gollum is in pretty much like like
Is in too deep?
modern contemporary literature. I mean, he's the addict. He's a textbook addict when it comes to this stuff. He's doing what he can to get his fix. His fix is being as close to that ring as possible with the hope that one day he can take it and own it again.
The answer to your question is methamphetamine.
Okay.
You have addicts who want to get better. I think he wants to be better. I think he wants to be done with this ring as well. It's just
Also an addict behavior.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I think you guys, hit the nail on the head on that. You go to rehab, you try to do the right things, you try to say the right things. And at the end of the day, though, a lot of them just go back to being an addict. You do have an occasion where people do break through and break free from that addiction. And that's what I'm saying. I'm wondering if Frodo doesn't sell him out to the Rangers, can he break away?
There's no way he would continue to hunt for that ring. That's his main, motive in life, is to get that ring back at all costs. What it comes down to, Frodo is also enabling him by dangling that ring over him all the time, that he has it and that he's his master. So it's like, it's only a matter of time until he's betrayed. And Frodo's trusting with this and doesn't realize that he's actually enabling an addict. There's kind of like a deep psychology to this piece, too.
I want to touch on Helm's Deep, and I want to know, okay, so they bring the explosives, because that's the weak point of the...
Rock? Rock?
Yeah. Wouldn't you know, as your king or even, a strategist, that you have a weak point and that's what it is, and you don't do anything to fortify that area?
They hadn't seen anything like that, because they were going up against a wizard. And the wizard, with alchemy, takes whatever he does to make the gunpowder. They had no idea.
So they didn't have explosives at a particular time in any kind of
nothing.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's my bugaboo. Every impenetrable fortress. I don't know if this is considered the first time that that anything like that, but it has to have a Achilles heel, and of course it's a storm drain. I guess my biggest bone of contention is Legolas has shown himself to be super accurate with a bow and arrow. And the time that he needs to stop somebody, he's not accurate. It completely is different from his character overall. I guess if it wasn't Legolas that was the one shooting at the guy running with the torch, I think I'd probably have a little bit better feeling towards it. It just seems a little off kilter. The battle scenes are amazing. And, Peter Jackson had said that he wanted to put the most epic battle sequence in movie history on screen. And in many cases, he did. It still stands up to this day. It's amazing.
The lighting, especially for me, is just like, wow, this is so well lit. Like, just the cinematography of it, and watching it in widescreen and all that, in the dark, and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah, we talked about a couple times Game of Thrones. The last couple of episodes could have taken a real page out of their playbook here.
Yeah, they should have.
But the Uruk-hai, I think they sell them a little bit down the river a little bit. In the first movie, they're considered badasses. And here, there's 10,000 of them. They kind of turn into pawns instead of badasses. I mean, because they just get wholesalely killed off. Ultimately, when Gandalf shows up with the riders, they're still outnumbering everybody by a whole lot. And they end up turntailing and running into the forest. It kind of sells them a little bit short. I understand why they do it, because, of course, good has to triumph over evil.
Your Roman military strategy, too, right?
True.
With the cavalry that comes in and they flank them, so they take them off guard and send them panicking off. So that's kind of like one of the classic maneuvers. Second of which, is never engage with a Sicilian when death is
right. And never have a land war in Asia.
Yeah, but that's essentially what the orcs were doing.
Yeah, and the other question that I have is, how did Gimli and Legolas only come up with that they only killed 42 and 43 respectively? They are wholesaling killing a bunch of these a bunch of these Urukai, and they can only come up with 42 and 43. That's a little
I'm
much,
wondering
too,
if
but-
that's a nod to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the universe. What's the answer to the Secret of Life? 42.
All right. Well, I know I haven't said too much about this, but we'll talk about our final reviews. I'm going to kick it off because I'm the one who's probably got the most negative review of the movie. I'll keep
Hey
it
guys,
short.
Eric's here.
I know, right? I'll keep it short and sweet. It's got a great battle scene. I'll give it that. The rest of the movie is just people walking around endlessly. Bored the hell out of me. It's 3 hours of my life I'll never get back. If there is a God, I will never watch this movie again. I'll give it a C for an average just based on the battle scene. Ken, what do you got?
I like this more than the previous movie. I think the battle scene is well done. He actually shot 20 hours of film for this battle scene. He had a lot to work with. I think it's a really well-paced movie. I disagree with you on the walking. I think, they're still walking here, don't get me wrong.
Oh my God, the whole movie is walking and trees walking.
Right.
It's probably because I noticed it in the first movie so much. Now that's the only thing I'm
That's the only thing you're looking for now is how much do they walk
and
here?
oh my goodness,
So-
if it's not a helicopter shot of them climbing mountains and this, that, and the other, I'm like, oh my God, just stop walking.
But I think the difference between this movie and the last movie is character development. I think there's more characters that are being developed here. And I think I appreciate, especially Gollum, the split personality. Whenever he's on the screen, we just want to see who we're going to get. I really like what Peter Jackson did here. Some of the CGI is a little dated, but some of it holds up better than some of the CGI that we get today. So on that note, I'm going to give it a B+.
I'll go next. Out of the three movies, this is my favorite movie. Like Ken said, that there's a lot of character development here. I really like the performances from Andy Serkis and, of course, from Ian McKellen. The movie is well paced. I did watch the extended director's cut, so my version was a little bit closer to 4 hours. There are times it feels a little bit long. It keeps my interest a lot more than the other two movies of the three, so I'm going to give it a B+ as well.
Nice.
All right, Justin, take us home.
I like that what Ken was saying. I really agree with that it is kind of a clear progression. And this is everything that you want in a sequel. You build upon the world that was created in the first one. And I think it's one of those rare times where you look at it, you're like, wow, the sequel's superior to the original. I think this movie's an A. It's not my favorite of them. Like, that will be the next one, spoiler, but I like them anyway. So, but there's a lot of good stuff here. And that battle scene is just so good. Like, you could just watch that on YouTube over and over. Eric, would you watch the battle scene over? Like, out of everything?
I don't know. It was okay. I mean, yeah, there's no way they're going to beat tens of thousands of little mutants. It's not going to happen. It's a fantasy.
It's more of a suspension of disbelief issue than really like
Yeah,
execution.
I'm going to be honest with you guys, and you guys know this. The fantasy world is not my realm.
Not your
so
thing,
not at all. So really, I'm just like, oh, whatever. Just die already. Kill them all. Wipe them out. Kill the women, the children in the cave. I don't care. Just end it.
Wow.
But no, that's not what
Damn.
happens.
They put that
Yeah.
little
This
kid in the
Yes.
outfit. And Eric's like, he's going to die. Yeah.
I love how they're sending like 9-year-olds out with swords to fight these guys. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good plan.
This
All right.
review just got dark.
Yeah,
it got pretty
yeah.
dark.
I think this is a top 3 battle scene of all movies I've ever seen.
Wow, that's really high praise. I mean, I'm really partial to the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, which is coming up in the next one, which is what they base the Battle of Evermore on, Led Zeppelin.
Oh,
So
there we go. Zeppelin reference.
that's kind
All
of
right,
like-
I'm looking forward to
yeah.
that then.
So that one's
Cool.
kind of my favorite, but I mean, it's great, and it's got the start of some great characters. Look for a lot more out of Faramir and a lot more out of Eowyn in the next movie.
I don't even
So
know who
hopefully
you're talking
they'll
about, but
impress.
okay, great.
Think you
Progression
would.
of people that are, I don't know.
But there'll be some
I-
walking there, Eric.
I'm
We won't-
sure there's
Oh,
We
gonna
want
be
to make
some
sure there's going to be
walking.
some walking there for you.
There's
So-
going to be a lot of walking. Any trees walking in this one and the next one? I don't
Oh
remember.
yeah, they're
It's
there.
bushes.
Beautiful.
It's bushes
Just
this time.
bushes,
A
yeah.
shrubbery.
Yes. Yes.
It's a shrubbery.
Yes, we need a Monty Python reference for this. All right. Well, we all know we're going, the third one in the trilogy coming up will be the, what is that, Return of the King? Yeah?
Yes.
Return of the King, which I guess apparently
Eric,
is...
there's only one return, and
I
it's
know.
of the Jedi.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, I don't even know where I'm going with this one now. All right, so Ted, tell us where they can find us on the World Wide Web. God help us.
Well, we can be found on X/Twitter
For
at
now.
hooked on _movies. Yeah, as long as Elon doesn't destroy the world. Come and interact with us there, and whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, we should be found on all of them. And if you can, give us a 5-star rating, and leave us a review, because that helps us get noticed. And hopefully, if we get enough reviews, we'll be able to become Rotten Tomato certified someday.
And Ken, you are doing a phenomenal job posting some great articles there on Facebook. I've really enjoyed them.
And you can also join our Facebook group. It's Hooked on Movies. Just request to be part of the group. We'll approve you because we don't really have any standards. And then you can join the discussion.
And we'll waive
thanks
the
for letting me
membership
in.
fee this one time. That's
Hood
right.
and robe is extra.
Yes,
from,
exactly.
Black Klansman.
Black Klansman,
Black Klansman, yeah.
Yes, not included in your membership. All right. Well, obviously I'm not the person you really want for this review, but it is fun listening to these three gentlemen talk about the movie. Sometimes a little bit more fun than watching the movie itself. But we will see how the third movie, The Return of the King. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and good night, and have a pleasant tomorrow.
See you at the movies.
See you next time on Hooked on Movies.
Bye.